everyone, and welcome back to Haunted Hearsay. This is Caroline. I'm up in the wilds of Donegal as usual, and I'm here with Ben, who's down in the capital. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Caroline. How
How
are you?
are you?
I'm okay. Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, it's kind of that kind of last week rush up to Christmas.
I know it's getting crazy, but then we're on a break. So,
Well, I suppose that's true as well. I see we're still in, well, we're out of lockdown and everyone else has gone into lockdown.
yeah, I saw that over in the
Yeah, it's a
UK.
bit mad. It's a
Yeah.
bit mad. Well, we have a few things to cover tonight, but it's going to be quite short and sweet tonight because, well, it's a lot to do coming up the last week, coming up to Christmas, and we're going to the clips that you had up on Tuesday night. We're going to just I'm going to hark back on a few of them, but I have a story first of all. It was told to me last week in Letterkenny, and it's been verified by two of the parties that were involved.
Another spooky
Now,
story.
it's just as well I can't remember the name of the street the house is on, but I wouldn't have mentioned it if I could remember it. But
Yeah.
it's a number 8 anyway, and I believe it's a corner house. And what it was is again, I'll not say the friend that was telling me about it. It was a couple she knew that were staying in this house. This is maybe 2 3 years ago, and they were staying in this house in Letterkenny. And while they were there, they weren't getting on. The house was really hard to heat, no matter, like, they could have the heating on all day. It was freezing. They
Mm.
started getting really bad smells in the house, and they thought maybe there was something wrong with the plumbing. They started hearing scratching in the walls, thought maybe they had mice. Checked all these things out, nothing wrong with the plumbing, no other evidence of mice or rats anywhere. But this was continuous, but they weren't thinking anything paranormal about
Mm.
it because it wouldn't have crossed their minds. It's not something they're into. It's not something they necessarily believed in before this happened. But the one thing about the house was that it was affecting both of them, and they spent a lot of time fighting and came very close to separating and decided to move. The minute they moved, all stopped, started getting on great again. All this, they weren't, the sleepless nights, the noises, everything stopped. And they realized whatever it was about that house, it had an effect on them. Now, the girl that was involved, the couple that moved in afterwards, she knew them, but she only knew them to say hello to. She wouldn't have known them very well. And she happened to meet them, say, maybe several months after they moved in, and she bumped into the girl at the shopping centre, and she's like, "Oh, are you still in that house that we were?" She's, "Oh no, we left there." "Oh, you couldn't heat that house, and the noise. Did you ever hear any noises in the walls?" And they were like, "Yeah, we did actually." And she says, "And me and my partner just weren't getting on when we were in that house. It was just constant fights. It was a bad atmosphere. There was a smell that came at least several times a day, every not continuously, but it would come."
Come and wave.
And yeah, so they started comparing notes. And there happened to be a man listening to them. And he walked over and he says, "I couldn't help but overhear." He says, "You aren't talking about number 8." And he said the name of the street. And they both looked up and they went, "Yes." He says, "I used to live there."
Mm.
And he says, we had to have a priest in to perform an exorcism in that house."
Wow.
And the two women were like, "What? Seriously?" So it wasn't just in our heads, it wasn't just them, you know, it affected their moods. This is people that had no belief whatsoever in the paranormal or anything,
Mm-hmm.
spooky or ghostly, but they couldn't. I mean, it certainly affected them. The smell, from the smells to the scratching on the walls to the not being able to heat the house. I mean, literally leaving the heating on 24/7 and it still wouldn't heat the house. Apparently, if you were talking, you could see it at times during the day, you could see a breath coming out in the house.
That's
So yeah. Now I don't know why this house is haunted. They don't know either. The man there says he'd lived there, but he was more in tune, and he had a psychic come in, and the house was definitely, whether it was an actual spirit or a demon, but it sounds more demonic than it does spiritual. It sounds more demonic. And whatever happened with him, because I haven't met him and I haven't heard his side of the story, but they got a priest in to bless the house first of all, and then to perform an exorcism. Now, I don't know. I know that a priest that's able to perform an exorcism has to be appointed by the Pope. So I'm assuming that that was the case. Like, this is an elderly gentleman, with no hidden agenda. He doesn't live there anymore or anything, you know. But it's in another part of Letterkenny to Ballymacool. It's the opposite side of the town.
Mm.
Now, the only thing I could think of, I was looking, trying to see what could have happened there that might leave some sort of underlying bad vibes, basically.
Yeah.
And it was back to what Regina was saying about there being a huge battle in the 1600s that was near Ballymacool Estate, where thousands of people were killed. And so I've got to assume that it's something like that. I mean, without doing further investigation, I really don't know.
Yeah.
But the fact that the house had to, that, you know, that this is an elderly gentleman, and the fact that he had to have someone come and perform an exorcism. But we know from watching and listening and reading about The Exorcist that was based in Rome, the oldest guy, that one exorcism isn't always enough.
Mm.
You usually have to perform several,
Yeah.
especially if it's a demon. I think an exorcism is enough if it's a restless spirit or a poltergeist. But if it's a demon, I don't think one exorcism is enough, which is probably why there's such a high turnover of people moving into this house and moving back out.
Yeah. It'd be funny to, well, not funny. None of it's funny, but
No, not
it'd
at
be,
all.
I suppose, in retrospect for those people, it's funny that they all came across each other in
Yes,
the same
that now that's
conversation.
serendipitous. That, yeah, exactly. The fact that he happened to overhear them, it wasn't a case of they sought him out or anything.
Yeah.
The first one that was in happened to bump into the other girl, and it was like, "Oh, are you still in that house?" And no, 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 we're out of there. They started comparing notes. He overhears them, and he's like, "You're not talking about number 8 by any chance?" And they're like, "Yes." And then he tells his thing. But I
Creepy.
mean, that's scary stuff.
I'd be
That's
interested
really
to
scary
hear
stuff.
some more of the. I'd love to hear kind of a
I'd
first.
love to know who that man is. I'm
Yeah.
going to ask Regina to see if she can find out. Regina's a fount of information, so hopefully we're going to try and arrange to get her on in Zoom. She would know a lot more about Letterkenny, being from Letterkenny.
Yeah.
And and I did ask her, I says, if you could find out maybe more about the area. Did something happen? Is there a reason? Again, it's like, is there ley lines?
Hmm.
Is there a lot of electromagnetic activity, or is it ley lines? Because there seems to be that connection. Anywhere you go in the world where there seems to be some sort of demonic activity or poltergeist activity, there's ley lines involved.
Mm.
We don't know. I mean, are these like a weak spot between our world and the next world, or our dimension and the next dimension? You
Something
know,
like that. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think there's some things, I believe there are some things that science will eventually be able to explain. And I think
That's one of them.
there's something with ley lines, definitely something with ley lines, because the activity that's been recorded all over the world, and the first thing they'll say, yeah, there's ley lines running underneath here. Even if you look at World Heritage sites, they're
Mm.
connected by ley lines. From the pyramids in Egypt to the pyramids in South America, there's geographical connections you can do with all of them.
Hmm.
So I mean, yeah, it's scary stuff when you hear things like that.
Yeah.
It's scary
Small
stuff.
houses.
Sorry, excuse
I
me a
find,
second.
I find
My son
some.
just walked in there, so he can go back out again. But yeah, it's scary stuff, and it's, yeah, I wouldn't fancy it myself, but we definitely have to look a wee bit more into it.
Yeah, I find it scarier as well when it's like a residential house and not a castle or something, or
Yes,
not a hotel,
exactly.
even a hotel. You're like,
And
oh,
it's not even an old house.
yeah, that's
You
your.
know, you're probably talking something that was built in the 50s or 60s or something like
Yeah.
that, you know? So it's not, it's what was there beforehand. What was there beforehand? I don't
Unlike
know.
Ballymacool, which has a bit of a link to an older time from 16, whatever,
Yes, I think so.
yeah.
But again, it would involve a lot more looking into, a lot more investigation to see what we can find out about it, to see if we can make any connections as to why that's the case.
Hmm.
But
That's exciting. Yeah.
really scary stuff. And yeah, so we'll definitely be coming back to that once I find out more about it. Maybe at the same time, I was going to ask Regina about going round and maybe taking a few pictures of the house, but it is a rental property in Letterkenny, and
To
I don't
ruin
want to get in trouble with
it.
any landlords, and
Yeah.
I don't want to be frightening people that may possibly be living there or are thinking of moving in.
Hmm.
Housing is an issue, so
they'll find out for themselves.
I think they will. Yeah, I think they will. But definitely, I'll go around. I'm going to go around, make an effort to go around and see it and see what I can come back with and what I can find out. But back to the clips from the Christmas book that you put out on Tuesday.
Yeah.
That's some weird, scary stuff.
Yeah.
It's really the origins of not so much Saint Nicholas, but it seems to be that and it's not even like, well, it is, I suppose, the origins of Christmas. But take out the religious aspect of it in the Holy Week. There's nationalities, nations, countries, their folklore is all about these horrible, scary demons or elves or Krampuses or whatever around that time of the year, the
Yeah,
end of
I
the
find it
year.
weird. I was surprised that there was a Greek cave dwelling goblin that comes out during that time of the year.
Yeah.
The lady with her
See,
dog as well.
that's definitely that's harking back pre-Christianity.
Mm.
Those, and you can see, I mean, like the clips that you put out the other day, you could see how they've married all those things into what we now celebrate as Christmas, like the Russian woman that went round in a sleigh delivering toys.
Yeah,
There's our Santa.
and
We
Chris
know that it
People.
was only a sleigh and one reindeer until it went to America.
Mm.
And then they thought that's not good enough for our advertising. We're going to make it 6. It was a 6 initially. But then when the story of Rudolph came up, it became 8. And then,
Yeah,
excuse me. But it's the origins are very dark. We have to look a lot more into that because you wonder why.
yeah. I want to know, yeah, why, like, for instance, the lady, the Frau Gouda with her dogs, like, why does she set her dogs on families that are having a happy time? Like,
I
you
know.
don't really get the logic.
Why do these sort of nations have such a dark origin for that period, the end of the year? As I say, if you take the religious element out of it and the Holy Week away, and but these are traditions that are going back like BC, not even AD. Christmas
Yeah.
wasn't established as a Holy Week until Constantine's time, and that was sort of 320 BC or AD. Sorry. So these traditions predate that, but they're
But
very, very dark in origin.
it could be just to do with the dark, short evenings and
I was wondering, is there a
long winter.
connection with the way that we celebrated Halloween as Irish people, which was very dark, and that they felt they had to, sacrifice children to appease the winter gods.
Mm.
You wonder, is it something to do with it just being the end of the year and it being winter
I
that
think so.
scared people back in the day? Or was there some other reason? Was there some alternative reason? Was it stories that parents made up so that children wouldn't wander off?
Yeah, or even on a bigger level, is it stories that people made up so society would behave themselves better?
Yeah, you have to wonder what sort of where these were coming from. What sort of was there animal attacks,
Mm.
and that they were able to make it scarier with the telling of a story. As we know, I mean, there was nothing written down on, well, actually lots of things were written down, but there was nothing in print until the mid 1400s.
Mm.
So before that, everything was either hearsay or handwritten, but things that were handwritten were usually commissioned by rich people, be it Bibles or stories to do with royalty or whatever. It wasn't
Mm.
like you had your paperback and I'll have a wee read. There was none of that. So the stories could have grown, but you have to wonder why so dark, why such a
Yeah. Well, we'll have to just dig in deeper and find out more, I suppose.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if anybody's listening, if they have any stories to do with sort of the European deities and elves, and but
Mm.
all the trolls, the not so nice characters of magic folklore,
Hmm.
and why it is at Christmas. You can see how they've married all these things now, and I love the Christmas that we have now. But it wasn't the Christmas my mother had when she was growing up, or not even me, not even the one we had growing up. And I was talking to my mom about it, and she was saying, "Well, sure, her parents didn't celebrate. Not just her parents; nobody did really here in Ireland, because it was just a Holy Week. At the most, you burnt a candle in the window, and you maybe put up a bit of holly for luck. But none of this sort of the gift giving, etc. My mum's family moved to Glasgow when she was 5 years old, and she was brought up in Glasgow. And so the first time she can remember getting something for Christmas was a Christmas in Glasgow, because people there, it was more, that tradition had filtered down from England, or filtered up from England, because of the royal family, Prince Albert and Queen Victoria. It was Albert, as I say, that brought those traditions to England, and they made them popular, and people copied the royals. So it was more a British thing, and it
Mhm.
did filter over here in the, sort of
Well,
late.
thank God for the British and the Americans, then we'd have no Christmas otherwise.
Well, there's not much credit I'll give the Brits for a lot of things,
Yeah.
but I like Christmas, and I like the Christmas that we have now. The one that sounds like they had even 100 years ago was scary.
Yeah.
It wasn't something you'd
Skip
look forward to.
pagan
It'd be like,
Christmas.
oh my God, if I've misbehaved, this is going to be a really serious time for
Getting
me.
beaten. That's the thing I find the scariest actually, is the like the fact that when one of the things Santa's helper had a stick, and then I believe Krampus also has a stick.
Yeah, and even in the
Bastard.
story of St. Nicholas, now, I mean, the stories attributed to him while he was alive were that he had helped out people and apparently had all these magical powers, as
Mm,
did a lot of our ancient saints, according to folklore, like Columba and Columkill had all these magical powers. Um, but the birch, I see, for some reason, I just think that's like something parents would say.
mm.
You won't be getting a present to celebrate St. Nicholas. You'll be getting the birch. You hope the birch doesn't. You can almost see it, and you can almost see the wheels turning over in a parent's head for that. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I really don't know. We're speculating, because the way that all those traditions have all married into each other to create the one that we have today. But I mean, they come from every aspect of European history,
Mm.
not so much outside the continent. We don't know an awful lot about the Chinese traditions or the Asian traditions around Christmas. Well, I don't anyway. I'm sure
Yeah, they lived
other
their
people
own
will.
year,
Yeah,
New Year.
and we know that the New World, all their traditions were brought over from Europe or
Mm.
Asia, and were married into the culture to the one that we have now today. So there's no actual traditions or fairies or else originating from there, unless the Indians had theirs. But they didn't refer to them as elves. It was always shapeshifters. That would be the one type of character that could change into
That's one
different
thing
things.
we haven't spoken about much, and there's a lot of Irish shifter lore as well that might
Yeah,
be.
that's something we'll definitely get into, and
I like
because
Irish.
that's theirs is tradition, like the Red Indian of America. I mean, they're descendants of the Asian, like India, from India, Asians. They're like they were the first people to discover America at hundreds of years before the
Mhm.
white man arrived in America. But they weren't indigenous. They would have traveled across the continent onto the Americas, and then probably during the continental drift, that would have been, they've been there from that time, like from first man.
Mhm.
But again, they know by DNA, etc. They share the same DNA with Asian Indians.
Mm.
So they're, the same sorts of tribes of people, as it were, are descendants.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's.
I read this kind of off topic, but I watched a documentary about how the Vikings arrived in Canada, northern Canada. So
Oh yeah,
actually,
Greenland, etc.
yeah, they went to
They went
Greenland,
to Greenland first, yeah.
and Greenland was too intense. So they couldn't go backwards, so they had to continue on forwards. So they went to Newfoundland.
Mhm.
But this was before Christopher Columbus.
Oh
Uh,
yes, oh
uh,
yeah, the Vikings were out there way before. They did try to settle in Greenland. They were there for a
yeah,
couple
there
of
was a
years. They didn't just,
settlement. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, they didn't just arrive and go. I mean, they gave it their best shot, like, but
Mhm.
even for the Vikings, that was tough going
Yeah, the winter
before
was.
they moved on.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were definitely there, and in North Canada, etc., way before other Europeans had gone over and laid claim to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the reason. It was because of people like that that had already been to the New World, that knew of the resources this is why the Portuguese, the Spanish, the Italians sent ships across the ocean looking for these resources that they'd heard of in search of El Dorado or, cities of
Hmm.
gold and things like that.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, they didn't just go off on a whim. They went
Yeah, of
off
course.
because
They have to
they
be.
knew that Vikings had traveled to this world and that this world had resources.
Hmm.
Yeah, the Vikings definitely were out before any of the Italians or the Portuguese or
Yeah,
the
like how are the
Spanish.
Portuguese finding out? Otherwise, like unless
Yeah,
they find out from someone else, because I can't imagine someone in Portugal is very well traveled in that year.
I'm
Like
trying to think. Vasco da Gama, was he Italian or Portuguese? I think he was Italian actually, though, was he?
who?
Vasco da Gama, he was one of those explorers.
Yeah, I remember that name.
I'm trying to hark back to my school days, which are a long time ago. But yeah, it would be interesting. It would be very interesting to see how their traditions or their superstitions married in with natives
Yeah, that's
when
interesting.
they got out there.
Yeah.
But I mean, we know that the Aztecs. Now I don't know what the crack is with them. I think they might have been there from the beginning, the get go.
Oh, I also heard a documentary about that. They arrived as a very small group of people that were a more primitive society to the society that were already living in Mexico City, that kind of area. And they were sort of shunned, actually, and they weren't treated with respect by the natives because they were from sort of a more primitive culture. And then they ended up starting a colony sort of at the edge of Mexico City, um, because they were essentially exiled to the outside of the city because people who lived in the city were sort of higher society, and then they were like, you have to go out to this kind of marshland that wasn't didn't have any value. And then within 200 years, the entire Aztec community or society had evolved from that small community of people that were shunned out. Yeah. So it took two.
Yeah, theirs was quite a brutal regime.
Yeah,
But
they had
again,
two.
it was and to do with the seasons.
Yeah, so they had two main. I didn't do too much research into it, but they they built this big temple in Mexico. Just
Mhm.
yeah, and when foreign people came to visit, uh, they couldn't help but notice the stench of blood and the um
Yeah, they were very much about sacrifice and human sacrifice, and
human sacrifice was to appease one of their gods anyway, and then the other god didn't need it. I can't remember what the other god was, but it,
I do have quite a few books on it, and it's been a long
yeah.
time, but I must go back in and have a good
Yeah, we
read
may
through.
as well look into that as well.
Yeah,
It's a
because you've
significant.
got now they were after the Mayans in South America, weren't they?
I'm not sure. I'm not,
Yeah,
but
I'm not again. I don't even know. I'm trying to remember what the connection, whether the Mayans and the Incans were around the same time or which one was first. It's just a long time since I've gone into all of this. I must, as I say, I have
well,
lots
the
of books in
Aztecs were
there.
definitely in Mexico, and they were
Yeah, that's yeah.
yeah.
And as you say, shunned then, and this is what 3,000 years ago.
Mm.
And isn't it
And it only
terrible?
took
And isn't it
200.
terrible that they're being shunned on that mainland again?
Yeah. Well, the thing I thought was fascinating is that it only took 200 years to go from a small shunned community to a huge, I
Who
think
took
it was a
over?
million people, like millions of Aztecs by the end of it. And then they all disappeared. Um,
Well, a lot of them, when the Spanish arrived,
they got sick.
conquistadors,
Mm,
a lot of them were murdered. They were just murdered in their thousands. I mean, the conquistadors arrived with firepower, with guns.
yeah. Just,
Yeah. So I
yeah.
mean, that's a lot of them, and they were described. I have read several books, and it was actually really cruel what was done to them because they were expected to allegiance to the Spanish crown, and they had to denounce everything that was their own faiths, beliefs, traditions, and accept the European ones. And if they didn't, they were murdered. It was as simple as that. And that's in history books. We're not making that up. That's just a fact. There, that's the facts, as it were.
Mm.
And the weird thing is that we all know that history is normally written by the victors.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, something that a lot of people would have been proud of for a very long time. Oh, they didn't do as we told them to, so we got rid of them. And that made us Christians and them heathens. They're the ones that went and murdered en masse, and they were doing it in the name of Christianity, that sort of thing. Which, again, very dark origin, very dark origins. But with all that aside, I'm very grateful for the Christmas that we have now. I like that it's evolved, and hats off to Coca-Cola for, adding the most to it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but I knew from those clips that we were that you had up the other night. I mean, it was just, you could see from each country how their input has married into the Christmas now that we have today. From the elves in one country, from the Russian lady going around in her long fur robes on a sleigh, which would be right, because I've said that before. It would be Northern Europe that would have that kind of weather. People would go around in
And it's
sleigh.
interesting that it's women.
Yeah.
I mean, the
And
Russian,
St.
the
Nicholas didn't look
German.
like, yeah, St. Nicholas wasn't this big, jolly, white-haired, white-bearded man going around in the sleigh. He was a Greek. He
Yeah.
was of Greek origin. He grew up in Turkey. So and apparently small, wiry, not stocky, small, wiry man. But, that didn't fit
More like a wizard.
that didn't fit the picture of the advertising that the Americans wanted to do at the time. And I'm glad that they married a lot of different, but that would have made sense, because America is basically a melting pot. Every nationality from everybody else has gone there. And over the years, a bit of tradition from here, a bit of tradition from there, then that's a bit dark. We want to sell Coca-Cola, we'll sell it through Christmas, and thankfully they've married all those. Now, Coca-Cola is only in the 20th century, but I know that a lot of the traditions were married in the 1800s, early 1800s, and then came back to Europe. Now, a lot of the Europeans would have still, what's the word I'm looking for? I would have still sort of followed a lot of the old traditions, the ones that we were watching,
Tradition, yeah, they've
scary
been
ones.
traditional.
Yeah, and the idea of putting candles on a tree or decorating a tree, that is 100% Germanic origins. We know now that the character in the big long furry robes on a sleigh was a woman from Russia. The elves were from another country, so they've all married them into, now when you go on, it's like Santa comes from Lapland.
Yeah. I plan to get to Lapland. That's where.
Yeah, when did Santa move to Lapland?
Yeah.
When I was wee, he lived in the North Pole.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
global warming, he's moved down to Lapland.
Finland, yeah.
But you can see it evolving even in our lifetime. Well, obviously, my lifetime, you're a lot younger, but you can see how it's even evolved. I can, since I've been growing up.
Yeah.
And it's got much more extravagant. Again, I think we
Commercial.
should rein it back a wee bit,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a 20th century invention, the one that we have now. It's the same as the Halloween that we have now. And that was through advertising as well. And again, I'm glad of it, because the origins are very dark and
the alternative.
scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, we're gonna cover a bit more in that. We're going to go through the Enchanted books a bit more and get a few more stories, and maybe just hark back to them to see where we can find out where some of the origins came from. There's lots of stories, but nobody's saying, oh, well, this is what started that, or this is what's. Now we know the story of Saint Nicholas because he was the first canonized saint. His birth and death were recorded in birth in Greece, his death in Myra in Turkey on the 6th of December, 370 AD, I think it was. So we know all that because we know that he was a real man. All these things existed. Now, what was attributed to him, again, well, speculation now, I'd say at this stage. But yeah, but as I say, the other ones, a lot of the other European ones, I mean, that's scary origins, but we need to see if we can dig down deeper and find out what
Mhm.
it was that started those off.
Yeah.
Where did Neanderthal man in Europe and Homo sapien that married together, thank God they did, or we would all look like Neanderthals. At what point in their evolution did they start, oh my God, there's elves here, or there's a Krampus
Yeah.
there, or
Well, it would have been, they would have
yeah,
become societies first, and agriculture would have been a thing first. And it probably
yeah.
comes from agricultural
I
fear,
think so because
fear
it's
of crops dying and fear of
yeah, it's
whatever.
like if it happened, then it was something up there that was doing it, and we're not doing something right. I
Yeah.
think it comes. I think an awful lot of those traditions came with awareness.
Mm.
If you were just living every day to survive, then you wouldn't have that same awareness. So I think
Mhm.
with sort of knowledge came awareness, and with awareness came a lot of mad stories when you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. They're brilliant though. It's good to have them for us to go through, you know.
Absolutely. Like it's food for thought. There's no doubt about it. We're going to come up with one more story for Tuesday evening. I don't know if we're going to do Thursday evening. We'll see because that's Christmas Eve.
Yeah, no, we
We'll
might
see. We'll play that by ear.
play it
But
by
for
ear.
Tuesday, we're going to do a wee bit more on the Enchanted stories, the Enchanted book stories, just to do with Christmas. After that, then we have lots of good things lined up.
Mm.
That stories. You have a film that you did a few years back that we're going to show, and we're going to cover things on the Banshee, etc. And so we
Mhm.
have
For
those
the new
lined up.
year.
But we're leaving them for the new year, yeah, because that's not something you can do in one or two sittings.
Mm.
That's something,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot
Uh,
to cover.
in a weird way, well, we made the film in February, so it was sort of in the depths of winter when we made it in up in Donegal, and it's that part of Irish winter that's sort of after Christmas, the bleak. You don't get that
Yeah, that's
bleakness
it. It's
until
that sort of,
January. It's like a thrill January, February bleakness. But
and anyone that lives either in a warmer climate or in a city
you won't
environment,
notice.
it's yeah, you won't understand it until you come and spend January and February in Donegal,
You go up the
or
mountains in
other
Donegal
coastal
and
areas of
yeah.
Ireland, because it's well, especially up here in the northwest, we're really exposed to the Atlantic here.
Hmm.
But yeah, it is. It's bleak. They have a saying here in Donegal: if you can stick out the winter here, then the rest of the year's a doddle. Basically, you'll love it the rest of the time because it's a beautiful place to be all year. I love all the different seasons and I love all the different weather climates. As
Yeah.
Billy Connolly says, there's no such thing as bad weather. It's just the wrong clothes. I'm a big fan of Billy Connolly, so if I keep quoting him, that's why. So, listen, thanks everybody for listening in. Again, a little bit of food for thought. Anybody has a story, we'd love to hear it. We'll be back on Tuesday. We're going to do a few more stories from Enchanted, the Enchanted series that Ben has.
Okay.
And yeah, look forward to doing it. So, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yeah. Click
That's
the
important.
notification button if
Yeah.
you want to not miss our regular videos every Tuesday and
That's
Thursday.
Yeah, so we'll be back Tuesday. So, Ben, it was great talking to you. I'll talk to you
Okay.
again Tuesday evening.
Yeah.
And bye
Awesome.
bye, everyone. Chat
Cheers.
to you soon.
Thanks, everyone.